All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. And despite what's on your screen, it is June 30th, 2024. It is not August or September or even October. It is June 30th. And despite that, we are looking at a incredibly active Atlantic basin this afternoon. We have two areas of interest, one in the Gulf of Mexico, AL 94. We have AL 96 trailing Beryl. But of course, center stage is Beryl, looking pretty impressive this afternoon as a Category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The hurricane hunters have been flying Beryl all morning, and the storm has pretty much rapidly intensified since it formed on Friday afternoon. We are less than 48 hours since Tropical Depression 2 was named, and we have a Category 4 hurricane on our hands. That would be impressive for any time of the year. But to do it in June is absolutely absurd. Beryl is the first June Category 4 on record. We've never seen a Category 4 in the month of June. And this is one of the strongest hurricanes in this area in this time of year ever recorded. And in fact, as specifically where Beryl is going to be, only really Allen and Ivan, 2004 for Ivan and 1980 for Allen, were this strong moving through this region. So Beryl is a historic hurricane in more ways than one. And we are going to bring you the latest here this morning. So Hurricane Center at 11 a.m. did have Beryl as a 120-mile-an-hour Category 3 hurricane, with that movement to the west at 21 miles an hour. We can see those hurricane warnings are up for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Greneda, Barbados, Tobago, and a few other islands, all under the threat of significant impacts from Hurricane Beryl. However, shortly after at 11:35 a.m., the Hurricane Center did get another pass from both NOAA and Air Force Reserve hurricane hunters, and they found winds near 130 miles per hour, and the pressure has been free falling throughout the morning. So again, those are your hurricane warnings that are in effect, tropical storm warnings there below. Beryl's central pressure and core is very, very compact. So we're only talking about hurricane impacts about 25 or so miles out from the eye. But if you were in that area, it is going to be a violent, nasty hurricane as it moves through. And unfortunately, Beryl may not be done intensifying here this morning. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the satellite presentation here on Tropical Tidbits. And this is a classic major hurricane look to it. Twin outflow channels, one to the south, one to the north, little trough aloft, ventilating Beryl still. And those outflow channels are flanking a beautiful central dense overcast with that stadium eye clearly defined here this morning. Basically, all systems look very, very healthy for Beryl. The most I could say this morning, if I'm looking at the satellite presentation, is there might be some easterly shear beginning to impact Beryl. You can see the back half of the storm in the northeast flank is a little eroded, and there is some dry air indications back behind Beryl with some of these rope clouds exiting the outer bands. So maybe a little bit of dry air and shear is vectoring down on the storm from the northeast, but it's not much, and Beryl does not seem to be upset by it in the least bit. Infrared presentation shows those cloud tops continuing to cool this morning, and that eye pops out over the last couple hours, and then you see those blacks starting to appear inside of this big red area, and then you have more blacks right here. All those indicative that the cloud tops continue to cool. That means the storm is overall continuing to intensify. We can also look at the Hurricane Hunter data. Two passes earlier clearly showed SFMR wind readings of 125 to 130 knots. Which would correlate to a lower wind, when they calibrate the machine. But overall, again, 130 miles an hour was reliably reported by the hurricane hunters. Again, in a small swath of the eye wall, not widespread in the hurricane, but no doubt unbelievably impressive for the month of June. The question in the short term is going to be, how much stronger does this get before it hits the Windward Islands? And as it stands right now, Beryl could be a very powerful Category 4 hurricane. But will certainly be a Category 4 hurricane. It already is, and it looks like it's going to continue to intensify. Hurricane Center does bring this up to 140 miles per hour within the next 24 hours, which is right about when it's going to be impacting the Windward Islands. The landfall should be sometime tomorrow morning, likely just before 24 hours from now when this moves through, and this could be potentially catastrophic hurricane force winds and life-threatening storm surge as they talk about over portions of the Windward Islands. The hurricane models, for what they're worth, are correcting to this right now. The Beryl blew away even like the H-WRF for the most part in terms of intensity. All the intensity models were too weak with this, which is unusual. But the HMON running here today is initializing a little bit closer. It's actually a bit low right now. Beryl isn't quite at 954, but it's about 959. It's not far off. And the HMON rather does move this through as a major hurricane and brings it down to the 940s as it approaches the Windward Islands before weakening just a little bit. But again, the potential for a top end Category 4 hurricane, and hate to say it, but there is a very, very small chance this could touch Category 5, although I think with that shear, it might stay just below that. But it's possible. I don't want to rule it out completely. But again, folks here should be anticipating a major hurricane at this point. The future of Beryl beyond the Windward Islands gets a little bit more questionable. We have fairly high confidence this is going to stay on that west-northwest path. In fact, Beryl has tracked a little south of expectation so far, so it's not gaining a lot of latitude. So the lower it stays to start, the less likely it is to recurve out. So it's very unlikely this is going to impact directly Puerto Rico or Haiti. In fact, with the small storm, you guys may not even know this is passing by besides some enhanced trade winds. But Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, you guys are absolutely under the gun here. And you can see the Hurricane Center keeps this as a major hurricane until middle of next week when it begins to weaken a little bit in the central Caribbean Sea. Conditions may not be quite as favorable there, so it looks like it'll weaken some. And then it looks like by Thursday into Friday, we could be potentially watching this landfall in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. So what does that mean? Well, it means with fairly high confidence we can say that Florida and the rest of the East Coast northward, the Bahamas, are all good to go. This is not going to be your storm, and not much to worry about there. However, the central Gulf Coast, and especially the northwest Gulf Coast, looking at you, Texas, need to be watching this very carefully. The future of Beryl is a bit questionable. We can go over just some of the guidance here, and we can show you on Tomer Berg's website. The Super Ensemble latest output does move the storm somewhere into the western Gulf of Mexico by the end of the forecast period, and there's a lot of potential for this to recurve a bit further northward. However, this does heavily depend on Beryl's strength and how it interacts with the Yucatan. Notice how some of these members do not even touch the Yucatan, and then some just graze it. And I want to make a point here. The Yucatan Peninsula is not the most hostile thing to a hurricane. Yes, it's land. Yes, it will not strengthen. It will even weaken some moving over the Yucatan, but this isn't going to rip the storm to pieces. It's not going to do that. The Yucatan will slow it down a little bit, but Beryl could exit the Yucatan still as a hurricane and may have some time over very warm water to re-intensify, and some models do show this trying to recurve north at the end of the forecast period. A quick show of that basically looks like this. We're going to go over to the GFS, but again, on Tropical Tidbits, we're looking at July 4th, the morning of. If we analyze the upper air pattern that's going to be guiding Beryl along, we see this big high pressure camping over the southeast U.S., and the ridge axis kind of trails off to the west, or to the east rather, because there's a series of troughs breaking down our big heat ridge that's going to be sitting over for July 4th. So Beryl on this model here is moving just below that clockwise flow of the high pressure that's keeping it pushed more toward the Yucatan Peninsula. That's what all of our models see, and that's what it looks like it's going to do. However, as we go into Friday into Saturday, now Beryl gets hard to see because of the weakening the model is anticipating, but Beryl would be right about here. And notice how this ridge has pretty much flattened and moved off, and now you've got this trough in place. This is a weakness, and this would create a weakness in the Gulf of Mexico, and Beryl would likely want to start recurving towards that. Now, the specifics and exactly how weak and where would determine whether it's a weak curve or it just kind of like grazes into like the border, or if it's a strong weakness and it curves more into Louisiana. I mean, I would say like Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas all need to continue to watch this closely, especially in Texas, and especially if I was in like central South Texas along the coast, Corpus Christi, Galveston and point southward, and even Houston, I would be closely watching the storm going into next week. But again, the potential impacts would be the end of next weekend, as in July, 7th, 8th time frame for any potential U.S. impacts. So that's the latest I got on Beryl. Again, going to intensify over the rest of this afternoon and tonight. It could start leveling off at any point, but major hurricane, Category 4, going to remain a Category 4 likely through landfall in the Windward Islands. Again, St Vincent, the Grenadines, Greneda, Tobago, all need to be getting ready for what is going to be Barbados too. Needs to get ready for a nasty strike. Not everybody will get those worst winds, but somebody is going to get really nasty damage from the storm as it moves through, and this will be the strongest storm you guys have seen in 20 years. I'm not talking about June or July. I'm talking about anytime any place, one of the strongest storms you've seen in a very long time is going to move through these islands. And then down the road, again, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, you'd be next. Next is Yucatan Peninsula Friday. And then potential U.S. impacts would be next weekend, around a week from today or so. I do want to highlight really quick the rest of the basin as we zoom back out on our satellite here. AL94 is bubbling in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. Hurricane hunters have been going out there checking a look at it today. It's moving into Mexico. It's not going to be a problem for anybody. A few rain showers for South Texas. That's all we've got for that. And honestly, I'm not going to spend any more time on it because we got enough to cover. But following Beryl, I want to leave on this note. AL96 is developing behind Beryl. This is another tropical wave that's enjoying the same environment that Beryl had, and this is going to follow along behind Beryl. Now, it looks like a little more dust is exiting Africa. This might keep this a little weaker, and Beryl's upwelling, the Beryl pulling the warm water out of the ocean, might keep this a little weaker. But most computer models do bring this almost directly over where Beryl went, and then there's a lot more uncertainty about the future of the storm from there, because that high pressure ridge I showed you guys that breaks down, if I go into next week, that is going to move out towards the Monday, that high pressure ridge has moved back offshore, and now there's much more weakness. And if what is following Beryl, say Chris, is somewhere near Jamaica around this time, there might be a lot more of a window for a potential U.S. strike, Florida, Gulf Coast, Texas, something of that nature. So we're not going to just have Beryl throughout next week. We're going to have Chris as well following that storm along. So we're going to have to watch that as well. But again, that is way down the road, just something to keep an eye on. And folks in the Windward Islands, you guys need to be anticipating another tropical cyclone strike after Beryl, and hopefully Chris will not be nearly as strong, but the hurricane warnings may go right back to watches for the storm following it. So we're just going to have to keep a close eye on all that as well. So that's what I got for you guys today. We'll have coverage through the rest of the week, and I am going to be going back to Florida for the week ahead, but I am going to have my recording stuff with me, so updates will continue, and of course on Facebook as well. So that's what I got for you guys this morning. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.